When I was born 24 years ago, I knew my existence was an empty one. Because I lived in a world where Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light wasn't released in my baby territory of North America. Also, as a baby, I couldn't speak Japanese, so importing a copy wouldn't solve my problem. If I could go back in time and tell my baby self, for the series' 30th anniversary, they would kind of release the original game for Nintendo Switch. My baby self would ask, how was it? And me being a friend to myself, I would begin to explain. For an RPG that is 30 years old, it's very surprising to see how many staples of the series would be included in the very first game. Often for a series that is so long running, the first game barely resembles the ones that would come later. If you look at mainline entries, not spin-offs that try to emulate their older games, there's a great divide between other franchises like Mario or Zelda than there is for Fire Emblem. Even in Three Houses, the presence of the original game is still felt very strongly. Besides characters and lore, the games don't have that much in common in terms of mechanics. Super Mario Bros. 1 and Mario Odyssey have jumping and some power-ups in common. The first Zelda and Breath of the Wild just have a sense of exploration and swords in common. Meanwhile, the first Fire Emblem and Three Houses both have grid-based movement, turn-based combat, experience gained through battles, combat arenas, a wide cast of characters, permadeath, weapon durability, and many of the same unit types. If the original game is so closely tied to the newer ones, does that mean it stands on its own? Come with me, and let's find out. After getting thrown into what seems to be the middle of the story, you're greeted by a sight that should be familiar to fans of the Fire Emblem series. There's a map, your units are blue, enemies is red. Then you try to move your units and notice that there's no indication to exactly how far you or your enemies can go. In every Fire Emblem game, at least the ones released in North America, every time you select a unit, friendly or not, it shows a grid of how far they can move and how far their attacks can reach. This is a vital piece of information, and it's the largest factor to where you're going to place your units. And unit placement is where most of the gameplay is going to come from Fire Emblem. At first there's a big adjustment, but I got used to it eventually. And there are added features that make it easy to recover from a mistake you would make because of the lack of unit movement information. These features are the turn rewind and the bookmark feature. Turn rewind lets you go back to a previous turn, erasing the mistakes you made after that turn. It can even allow you to go all the way back to a previous level if your heart desires. Bookmark allows you to drop a save point anywhere, anytime in the game. If you're going to do a risky maneuver and you worry about that one of your units will die, make a bookmark and see how it goes. If it doesn't work out, just load into the bookmark and try something else. There are no limits on either of these features. You can use it as much as you want. These new features are helpful, but they can be a bit of a double-edged sword. Because if you aren't paying maximum attention to the game, you might click bookmark instead of rewind. Which I'm not saying this happened to me, but this can take you all the way back to a level you've already beaten or encounter you've already figured out. This is a less common occurrence as the game goes on, my friend told me when I was in a conversation with my friend, who's real, and he's Canadian. Yeah. Combat is also a bit different, in that there's no weapons triangle anymore. Instead, weapons carry different traits like differences in accuracy. Besides that, it is similar to other Fire Emblem games. Units fight each other, gain experience, and if they fall in battle, they're lost forever. You can recruit enemy units with unique names. Mostly you're going to use Prince Marth and Princess Kada, but other units have special requirements that they have to talk to their friend or brother or something. Just look it up, it's not worth it with the vague hints they give you. For a lot of levels, the battle strategy can be pretty brain dead, but there are certain levels that will make you feel like you're playing 4D chess, and everyone else is playing with a dead rat. In Chapter 22, most of the enemy units are flying units, and these flying units can move fast, far, and are, rhyme, decently powerful. If I sent my strong units to face them, my units with weak defense would be flanked and killed. So I used the border of the map and the mountains to make a shoulder, an upside down L, or as Patton once coined, the Waluigi method, and put my weak units in the protection of my formation. My strong units held the line, and my weak units helped with healing, powerful spells, and highly effective archery. Damn, that was good. Sadly, the story's not. The story is bare bones and vital information is presented in a bizarre order. This information is dumped at the end point of the game, but it's too little too late and the story just comes off as confusing. It's impressive that an NES game has this much story, where each character has their own ending, but it's really just a novelty. All the dramatic moments in the DS remake had room to breathe. Where they're so blunt, it comes off as almost comedic in the original form. Story mode on Fire Emblem on 2x speed be like... Well, the gameplay's dated, but it mostly holds up, and the story's not intrusive to the experience, so I guess this game has no major drawbacks. By God, that's the inventory system's music. This stinks. Each character has space for 4 items/weapons, which you're going to fill up very quickly, as weapons will break after using them a certain number of times. So you want to stock up on gear as to not leave your units defenseless in the field, in case their weapons break. When you want to switch your weapon out for a better one, you're going to have to trade it, drop it, or store it in the convoy that acts as an item pool for the whole army. A unit can only do any of these actions once per turn. So when you want to upgrade multiple units' gear or switch out gear to better fit a situation, it's going to take a real long time. And not a fun time. It's management. The other dated elements I can forgive, but the inventory management options in later games, like being able to do this all before a battle even begins, is something I miss more than meeting my best girl at the mall shop. I feel like I can hear some of you saying,
"Hey, aren't you judging this game by modern standards and not appreciating it as a product of its time?"
Well, lovely viewers, I have a good reason for that. And it's just that I think this game has no historical value as a reflection of Fire Emblem's or gaming's past. Playing an old game on its original platform and the way it was always designed to be has value. Historical value. There's also nothing wrong with playing an old game with new features, like in the NES/SNES library, or any emulation stuff you want to do with mods. I don't care. But that's more of entertainment purposes than it is historical purposes. The way the game was presented in trailers and the way they updated the game for modern times are kind of in conflict with one another.
Marth? See? Fighting to take back his kingdom? Friends with Sita and Tiki? Tries to save the world from the Shadow Dragon? Sounds cool, but you're scaring me. Maybe this will help.
This already happened. You can't trick me anymore. Frey's real and he's my friend. They've added so many new bells and whistles to this game's release. It's not the original game anymore. It's some weird hybrid that was never designed to be played the way it can be on Switch. First off, the game is slow as molasses. Every player is going to change the game to 2 times speed, but this affects the entire game, including the dialogue and the music. Dialogue moves so fast you can barely read it, and the music goes from simple but charming 8-bit to a full assault on the ears. Goto's this powerful wizard you get at the end of the game, and the music really adds this idea that he's this mystic force that is kind of not really part of the real world. He's in this own realm of his own, and when the music's 2 times speed, you don't really get that. You aren't experiencing the first game because the tone that was trying to be achieved through story beats and music are not allowed to exist in the conditions they were designed for. This is also true for the gameplay. By the end of the game, a lot of my characters had reached maximum level, and this is a rarity in most Fire Emblem games, especially the older ones. I achieved this by exploiting the hell out of the new features. There are combat arenas where you can send units to battle for XP and money, and battles not related to the main game, and what I would do is I would add a bookmark right before an arena fight, and if it went well, I would do this again and again until a unit fell. I reload right before the fight where the unit fell, and then I do this again with another unit. I got a lot of money and XP that was totally unintended. And risky strategies don't hold the same weight anymore if you can just reload right before everything goes wrong. Even in later Fire Emblem games, they allowed you to turn back time, but there's a limit to how much you can use it. There's no such limit in this game. You can go hog wild. I got to a level of strength in this game I'm not sure is achievable in the original game's release, unless you're both extremely lucky and knowledgeable. The only reason to play this game over the other 2 remakes is to say that you played the first game in the Fire Emblem series in its original state, where everything started. But the Switch version is so altered that it takes away that novelty. I don't actually care about saying I played the original Fire Emblem game. It won't be a regret on my deathbed. But that's really the only reason I could think of playing it. And these new features they add, they don't elevate it above an average game. And those same set features take away the novelty of playing the game in its original state. If you're dying to experience Marth's story, don't settle for this. They've already remade the game twice. This release in North America is the definitive worst version of Marth's battle to retake his homeland. Get an English ROM of Mystery of the Emblem or Shadow Dragon on the DS or Wii U Virtual Console. You're gonna have a better time playing those games, 100% guaranteed. Shadow Dragon has a prologue, side conversations that flesh out characters, a story that makes sense, a non-cursed inventory system, and gameplay that can be sped up without destroying the entire experience. There's a reason that these characters are still so well represented in later games, while many other entries have 0 or 1 representative. But Shadow Dragon characters show up in many forms, many times, in many different games. Why this is the case and why these characters from the original game keep on showing up and are beloved members of the franchise to this day would not be clear with playing Shadow Dragon on Switch. Having this confused game be the only representation for Fire Emblem in its 30th anniversary is a big disappointment. Nintendo really had the opportunity to do something really cool here. Last year I also enjoyed Nintendo's flawed anniversary release, Mario 3D All-Stars. That one had the games, but it didn't have anything else, like art or facts or videos or anything, just the games. Meanwhile, Fire Emblem, the game is not that great, but the collection, the physical collection, I have no complaints. It's fantastic. It has this really nice art book that has this timeline of all the events of Marth's story and the stuff that happened before. It gives new context and fleshes out the story. It has all the portraits of the characters throughout all their appearances, through all their games. It's just a great showcase of how much these characters have evolved and changed over their 30 years of existence. If you fuse the characteristics of both these collections, you would get a complete package that celebrates a game series' history and actually contains games that a rational human being would want to play. I do not hate Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light for Switch. It had its bright moments, and it was nice to see the game kind of close to its original state before I perverted it with my modernity. But it represents something that I hope isn't a trend for Nintendo. These special anniversaries deserve to have more thought put into them. I know Nintendo in the past has been willing to put in the effort to celebrate a series, celebrate it with its history and with its games. These collections do very well, so it's not a money issue. Anniversaries are for celebrating. Like remembering all the times you went to the malt shop with your best girl. So it's about 1 o'clock right here, and I just had the time to do it, and I felt the need to do it. But I've been playing Phantasy Star 1 on Switch. It's part of this Sega Ages re-release, and it basically has done... It's really soured me on Fire Emblem, because Phantasy Star 1 is a game that nobody cares about. It's not even the most popular old school Phantasy Star, which I don't know how popular that is because I don't hear it talked about that much. And this is like the least popular entry in that series. And they've done so much work for it. It's such a good port. It's such a good update. It has all these new bells and whistles that like they've added item lists and weapon lists, because a lot of the descriptions of the weapons, like even the names, like short sword is abbreviated to shit sword, basically, because it's SHT. And they give this whole list of the weapons and the items, and they explain what they do and what their value is, because it's impossible to know from the game. So, it's archaic and would add all this frustration, but they got rid of it. They updated it. But they also have the original mode in the game, so you can play it in its original state. And they also updated the other updates, like they made the game faster, and they didn't ruin the whole entire rest of the game because of it, because it's just the speed of the character that walks around, and all the other stuff is a little faster, but the music and the story run at the proper speed. And like I said, this is a game that nobody cares about, and of course then I'm going to make a video about it, and it does everything I want. And Nintendo has a marquee franchise, and it's the first entry, and it's the first time it's ever coming here, and they did nothing. It was the laziest thing ever. So Phantasy Star 1 online gets a thumbs up from me. Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon it's kind of doo-doo now. It's lazy, and I'm glad it's going to vanish on March 31st. So don't worry about buying it. I don't know. I think just look up the sprites of Dolph online or something. Goodbye. I'm going to bed. I know in my first video I said I was going to make videos once a month, but they're just going to come when they come, because this is just supposed to be fun, and they're just going to be what I want to talk about. That's it. Goodbye again.